and welcome to, I think it's event number 5 on our week. It's amazing how the numbers, they change and different faces from event to event. Well, welcome to Globo Hydropower Limited, and this evening we are going to hear from the company auditor about what it is to be a public company. The intent behind that is for the international investors to have an understanding of Australian regulatory requirements of an Australian company, so they can feel comfortable with investing into Australia and into Globo Hydropower Limited. Just before we do go on to that presentation, I just wanted to give commendation to Ivan and Jackie. They've brought a large number of sales agents on board, and the Australian team. Commendations and congratulations to them for a wonderful week so far. We've had a fabulous week, and we look forward to a big night tomorrow night at the Oval. And so what I'd like to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is to introduce Stephen Watson from Toomeys. Stephen is the company auditor, absolutely. Stephen is Globo Hydropower Limited's company auditor, and he's going to speak to us about Australian regulations. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Elaine, and thank you everyone for allowing me to come and talk tonight. The purpose of my talk, as Elaine alluded to, was just to give some comfort around the company, the operations, the regulatory framework which surrounds the company, and my role as the independent auditor to assess the books and form an opinion on those financial statements and the underlying records as well. So just a little bit of information about myself. I've been a registered company auditor in Australia for about 12 to 13 years now. I'm a partner in an accounting firm. That accounting firm is actually based in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales, so it's about 450 kilometres south of here. We've got an office based in Sydney, which I come to on a regular basis, and I'm actually moving to Sydney in about 2 weeks' time. I've been the appointed auditor for Globo Hydropower Limited for the last 2 years. So that was in respect of the 30 June 2013 year and the 30th of June 2014 year. So I'll just wait for that phone. Won't be a moment. Alright, so probably just want to explain what an auditor's role is. So I'm independent of the company. So I was appointed by the company about 2 years ago to facilitate the process. And what we actually do is we come in on an independent basis, have a look at the books and records of the company, and there's a set of financial statements which are prepared, and then I'm engaged to form an opinion on those financial statements and identify any issues that may need to be reported to the shareholders, to ASIC, and I'll just explain what ASIC's role is. So ASIC is the Australian Securities Investments Commission. It's the corporate regulator for Australian companies. Globo Hydro is a publicly accountable company, so it needs to lodge its accounts with the Australian Securities Investments Commission, and any person in Australia can log on to that website and get access to those financial statements. Included within those financial statements is my auditor's report. So the auditor's report goes through basically the work that was undertaken and the opinion that I've formed on the financial statements. So throughout the time that I've been the appointed auditor, nothing has come to my attention, untoward or otherwise, which would make me report to the Australian Securities Investments Commission. So that's a really big tick of approval for the company. Now, in relation to, I suppose, the controls around the financial transactions for Globo, we do a detailed analysis of the controls. So we come in and have a look at what money's been spent, what money's been received, who's approved those transactions, and I'm happy to say that I'm quite comfortable with the financial controls that are in place at Globo Hydro. Some key players within the business, and it's quite good for the company, is that it's got an external accountant who comes in and actually does the bookwork. That individual is a chartered accountant with the Institute of Chartered Accountants. There's also an independent tax accountant who prepares the tax return for the year, and there's also an independent research and development specialist to apply for grants in relation to the research and development. And then I come in as the independent auditor. So there's really four key specialists that assist the company to fulfil its obligations with reporting to the Australian Securities Investments Commission. So just a little bit more about the Australian Securities Investments Commission. It's a corporate regulator, so it regulates me as an independent auditor. So when I became a registered company auditor, I needed to go through a detailed process in terms of the application and then the approval for me to fulfil my role. The same goes for Globo Hydro. They would have had to apply back in the day to become a company and a public company so that it's accountable to the public. Each year, Globo needs to lodge their accounts with the Australian Securities Investments Commission. And as auditor, if I become aware of anything that the public should be made aware of, I'm required to report that within 7 days of being made aware of it. And as I said before, nothing untoward has come to my attention throughout my time as auditor of the company in the last 2 years that would make me believe that I need to report a breach. The company's regulated by an Act, which is the Corporations Act 2001. That Act has got a number of requirements in it which put an onus on the directors of the company to make sure that they fulfil their obligations on behalf of the shareholders of the company. So a lot of those are to ensure that the company doesn't trade insolvent, that it can pay its debts as and when they fall due, that they don't do anything that's not in the best interest of the shareholders. So yeah, it's just a couple of things that they do look at. So probably just talk a little bit about, I suppose, my company and where we're going. So we are a national firm now. We're actually going to launch a new brand on the 1st of April, which will make us quite a large audit firm. That audit firm will actually change from TUMIs to Count Plus National Audits, and will be based in 41 different offices across Australia. So that's going to give us the expertise to be able to assist Globo Hydro when it goes to a significantly large company once the product goes to sale. Now, I just wanted to open up the floor for any questions or any concerns that people might need to be alleviated.
Steve, can I just raise one that the distributors raised with me?
Yep.
I've explained to them that because Globo Hydropower Limited owns a percentage in the International Trade Company,
Yep.
then you'll be still auditing the accounting firm overseas.
That's right. Yep. So, as I alluded to, our company is going to grow and we'll be in 41 offices. That will allow us to provide the services for the international companies. And then, like just last month, I had 2 staff working out of New York for a five weeks secondment. So we have got international affiliations in different countries. We've managed to refer a number of different accounting firms to Elaine over the last 2 years on an international basis to assist with those operations in the international companies. So Elaine's been quite to make sure that there are knowledgeable people and experienced people within those countries to be able to provide those services. So it's not something that you're just going to go into these countries without the expertise. Elaine's been very, very, I suppose the word pedantic, to make sure that that they have got the experience behind them and that they can provide services to the international operations.
And I guess probably the primary thing is like in our financial reports for Global Hydropower Limited, everybody wants to know, are you going to report on the countries,
Yep.
not just the overall income for limited?
Yep. So in terms of, I suppose, in the Australian company? Yep. So as Elaine alluded to, there will be a percentage ownership in each of those international companies. That revenue that's generated, or I suppose the company's value over in the international operations will obviously increase as the company or the operations increase. That increase will need to be reflected in the Australian operations. So when there is an increase in the value of that company, the percentage of ownership will need to be reflected in the Australian company's financial statements, and I'll have oversight over that value. And as an auditor, and as I said, I need to be able to form an opinion on the financial operations and the financial statements. So I'll need to make sure that I've got adequate audit evidence in order to form my opinion. So that means that let's say if I'm not provided with the adequate audit evidence that's required to form my opinion, then I'll need to report that accordingly within my audit report.
Can I just ask you to explain that in a different way? So when you say that another international business has increases its value,
Yep.
What does that mean to Australia? Can you tell me that again in a different way?
Okay. So let's say that we've got an international company, and that the value of that company and its net assets or net asset position is $100,000, and that's at the end of the following financial year, it goes up to $200,000. Let's say that Globo Hydropower Limited has got a 10% ownership in that company, then the value of the company's gone up by 100,000 from 100 to 200. Then if Globo Hydropower owns 10%, then they'll need to recognise a $10,000 increase in the value of that investment.
Steve, the question that all the international investors,
Yep.
ask: is their money safe in us in Australia? That's because it's not their country.
Yep.
And there has been some hesitation about putting money into Australia from an international investor. They want to know, is Australia safe? Is Globo Hydropower Limited safe? Are we going to run away with their money?
Okay. All of the cash that is in the company in Globo Hydropower Limited is in an Australian approved deposit institution, so a Big Four bank. So from that respect, the money's safe in the bank account. In relation to the investors' monies coming into the company, and up until today, I can say, well, in the last 2 years that the budget has been run very, very tight by Elaine. Safe to say that I haven't seen any money wasted by the directors. So looking at the income and the expenditure that's coming through the books, it's been very, very tight. So there hasn't been money wasted from my point of view, but looking at the books from an independent point of view. So and Australia, as I alluded to before, the Australian Securities Investments Commission oversees the operations of the company as the corporate regulator, and me as the independent auditor come in to assess the company. I'm assessed by ASIC as well, so if I don't report something in my audit report, and let's say 12 months later something happens to that company, and it's seen that I haven't performed my role properly, I would lose my license. So I'm not prepared to not report something because that's my livelihood. So I not only do the audit for this company, I've got about 200 clients across Australia, and if I was to lose my license or my registration, that would be it. So I wouldn't be prepared to do that for one company, just because it would affect all of the other audits that I do.
Thank you so much, Steve.
That's all right. Thank you for having me and allowing me to talk tonight.
Throughout the presentations and throughout the week, we've had the events all filmed. So